I am a HAL 9000 computer.
Why are you dressed like that? I love Leo.
Oh, hello there!
That was just bullshit, Joel.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
All right, we're about to get started. Everybody hit that like, share the show, etc., etc., etc. I'm moving my links around because I have a lot of links this morning. So many. All right, I think we can get started pretty soon. Let me bring myself in and make sure everybody's hitting the likes like they're supposed to. We'll go into here. Welcome, everybody. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide. Welcome, like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. Joining me this morning, of course, as our regular Friday. Hey, Rob Glenn, who's in an undisclosed location. That's all I'm going to say. He is. I'm not quite saying that I've sent him undercover to subvert Doge from the inside, but I'm not going to say that I haven't. So this may be a government building. It might just be one of the server rooms in Memphis. We don't know, and we don't care. He's bouncing his IP address through multiple servers. I think the last one I was able to track to 7 deep was somewhere in Malaysia in some sort of former 4chan server in a closet of a gangster's house. So I just stopped asking questions at that point. Rob, how are you?
Well, thank you for having me. Half of that is true.
All right, I'll take half. That's totally fine. We have obviously a lot to discuss, but I feel like, as I am wont to do, I have to go straight into the ego part of it. I have to jump straight into, well, no, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say one thing that's kind of like, for those that don't know, Hal got a big ego boost this week from the world of AI because they named something after me. But I'll talk to that later. And it's not the obvious. It's not the obvious. I'm telling you. We'll get to that in a minute. But we'll get to like robot bugs that are going to pollinate plants and automated feed pushers and all that kind of stuff, as I tend to go towards. But I think the biggest thing is the amount of bullshit coming out of the Trump administration about he's doing this whole thing about how they're investing, the chip companies and AI are investing money in the United States in a way they never would have done with Biden, even though it's all funded by the CHIPS Act, right? Okay. So NVIDIA, I'm a big fan, love NVIDIA's stuff. Growth company, no question. Their stock got hit the worst, of all the bigger tech stocks, but still is 3 times what it was early last year. So they're doing just fine. So Trump comes out and says, and I don't know how up on this you are, Rob, but you've seen similar things from the Trump administration where he says these kind of things. And he says,
you're talking about the H100 stuff?
No, this is just that NVIDIA announced a $500 billion server project in the United States, that they're going to build chips in the USA, and they wouldn't have done it because of tariffs. This is what Trump has put forward. He says this every time somebody announces that they're going to invest in the country. Now, if you do 10% of your business in the United States and 90% outside the country, and you go to Trump and you go, we're going to invest a huge amount of money, which is a small amount of money compared to the rest of their investments everywhere else, and he doesn't know that because he's fucking dumb, he will go, he'll go out there, pound his chest, say it was because of him, and he'll give you a break on tariffs. And you can make 90% of your chips in South Korea or in Taiwan for that matter, and he'll give you a pass on them, which is exactly what he did with Apple. Like this is the new thing. It's like bribe the American president with a number he can beat his chest with. So
Well, the whole thing is BS, even to the
Right.
point where there's even reports that they're not able to charge the tariff because their systems don't allow them to do it yet.
Well, they don't have a code
Which
for
is
it. They didn't do any of it. It's a
this
fucking,
is my
like he wrote.
point.
Yes. Go ahead.
Just like the Hunter Biden, he just wanted them to announce a investigation.
Investigation.
He just wants to announce tariffs, and you don't even know if it's true. You don't know
Right.
if it's true just listening to him. And then even if he did finally declare something as to be true, you don't even know if it's actually happening. So
Right. Oh, and I think along those points is he thinks what he'll do is, and this is about, it's not going to work manipulating you or I or anybody in our audience, but it will
right.
work with, in theory, Republicans in Congress. And so what the idea is, bring in Doge, announce these big projects that we're going to grow our way out of this tax problem. We're not going to have to pay for it through cuts or any of this other stuff. We're going to grow so much stuff that I've announced that trillions of dollars of industry in the United States over an undisclosed amount of time, by the way. But if I announce that to you, can tell your constituents that, yes, you voted to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, but we'll never have to do that because we're going to grow so much and it's going to be so fucking amazing. And you'll be able to make it through the midterms before they realize you're full of shit. That's what
Yeah.
this is. That's the announcement part. It's the same thing you're talking about with like the announcing the investigation into Hunter Biden. By the time we wanted you to do it within 2 months of the election, because it'll take 3 months for anybody to realize we were lying.
Yeah.
That's the
I mean,
same scam.
it might even be simpler than that, in that if he just says, once every week or twice every week, 500 billion,
Right.
400 billion, 700 billion, like he just keeps saying numbers and attaching
Right.
somebody's name to it. The MAGA or somebody who's not paying attention, let's put it that
Yeah.
way. It doesn't have to just be MAGA,
The low
thinks,
information voter.
wow,
Right.
I heard so many hundreds of billions, that must equal 5 trillion. We can do that because we've got 5 trillion coming our way because
Right.
he's been making all these deals, and you just lose track of any of it. And you're losing track of something that doesn't exist.
Right.
So,
right. It's not even, and not only is it not even here yet, it's sort of the promise of it sort of kind of will be at some point. And
yeah.
the irony is that if you're making a business investment like that, you're assuming that nobody else is going to beat you to the punch while that's happening. So let's say they invest a bunch of money into this and ratchet it up and start building this thing, and then somebody comes in and says, actually, we have we're moving from silicon chips to Byzantium or whatever, some other form of chip base, and it's cheaper and faster, and we can be tooled up quicker, and it only costs us $10 million to make as many super chips as they have, at their plant, maybe in 10 years. So that's the problem with how fast things are moving. The other thing I would like to point out is that Trump came out and patted NVIDIA on the back and said all this. But I want to point out something that, again, scratch the surface. So this is an article, one of many I found on this NVIDIA 500 billion server thing that they're telling you. So right out of the gate, this week, NVIDIA and its partners, Amcor, Foxconn, SPIL, TSMC, and Wistron, announced plans to build $500 billion worth of AI hardware in the U.S. over the next 4 years. Now, couple of things. Worth. So let's say, how much does it cost to make? So let's say, you're not, obviously, if it's worth 500 billion, that's how much you're selling it for, in theory. This is my way of like, watching the tap dance here. So let's say it's $100 billion. It's nothing to sneeze at, but you can sell that material for 500 once you've upscaled it and you've gone through all the processing for it and you've made these things, and it's a very complicated thing. You've got to invest $100 billion to make stuff that you can sell for 500. So you're going to make 400 billion in profit, and from that profit, you're going to pay, a certain amount of taxes in theory, which is almost none, because you're going to roll that over into the next thing, because you're never going to, all these companies are playing catch up to the amount of chips and the high quality of chips that they're going to need for the AI revolution and the localization of it. So they're just going to be fucking jamming them out the door. Like the NVIDIA chips, the top end, are sold out before they're even started in production, right? So they're going to roll whatever money they're making into the next layer of making until they can kind of find there's some sort of stable floor for production. So calling it 500 billion worth could be $100 billion of investment in could be $10 billion in actual facilities. But the idea is, because it's an indeterminate amount of time too, it's like it could be 500 billion over the next 5 years or 500 billion over fucking ever, right? There is no word on any of that, right? So it's so easy to talk Trump into kissing your ass and pulling off his tariffs just by giving him this. Just give me the ability to say 500 billion again this week, so everybody can just go look at all the business that's coming in. When, by the way, it comes in all the fucking time. Like, from real estate to technology, America is constantly having an influx of business growing and developing in the United States, because the innovation starts here, and especially in the tech firm. It's why the venture capitalists of the world spend most of their money here, and then they actualize it out of the country. So they make it here, and they develop these systems here, and then they sell them, from Symantec to Microsoft to the NVIDIA chips to whatever. The design is here, and then they sell them to the Saudis and the fucking rest of the world, whatever it is. So all the money is made outside the country, but it is formulated here. And so a lot of people come here because of our IP rules. Everybody else, if you build something in Saudi Arabia, if you invent a chip or something, it ain't yours, even if they pretend to have a capitalist system. The royal family owns a huge chunk of it. You do it in China, same deal. Russia, forget about it. They'll push you out a fucking window. But America has real rules about intellectual property. So that's why they come here. And if you don't enforce them, then that goes away. So basically, Trump is just going to end up having to announce that we are spending an extra, $20 billion. They're going to add it to the budget for IP theft protection because of all this, because that's what you're going to have to promise these folks to have them build here. But the point is that Trump announces NVIDIA, and it's all these folks to build this, build $500 billion worth of AI hardware in the U.S. over the next 4 years. The announcement included production of actual AI processors, their testing and packaging, as well as assembling actual AI servers. But while the announcement represented a plan to build $500 billion worth of AI hardware, it lacks detail, which cast doubt on whether it can be done. So we decided to take a closer look. This guy broke it down. TSMC has committed $165 billion to Fab 21, which is, I think, the one in Arizona. So it's safe to say that there'll be an advanced manufacturing capacity to build chips for NVIDIA. So it's an overlap. So they're taking what Trump is double counting again. It's the same Doge bullshit.
He double counts everything.
He double counts everything.
He quadruple counts things.
Right. Yes. And like, TSMC will build chips for NVIDIA that will be used by, I don't know, Apple or somebody. And that same $60 billion in chips that they're talking about will all stack to everybody involved. One $60 billion thing is now, $240 billion by the time he gets done with it. 200, so. Then, so they're having the 4 nanometer capable Fab 21 phase 1 is already ramping production. 3 nanometers Phase 2 is expected to commence in 2028, 1 to 2 years after they plan to ramp production of its 3 nanometer based Rubin GPUs in Taiwan, which again, this is them. They're not going to move that production here. They're going to keep building it in Taiwan, but they're going to get a break from Trump by saying that they're going to build other stuff here via this. So everybody's piggybacking. All these guys have met. And they've gone, all right, we'll all chip in on this bullshit, but we'll all tell them, we're all spending $100 billion, which is well within our budget for the kind of shit we're doing. And there's 5 of us, so we'll tell them it's 500. And every 2 weeks we'll remind him, and they'll think it's another fucking 500 billion. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, these are just press releases. Like,
Yes,
all and executive orders are Trump's press releases now.
right,
And they literally mean nothing. I mean, you can see in documentaries about him and the movies about him, his office is basically just full of, Time magazines and golf magazines that he's in. And
right,
his reality while he sits there and talks to people is, look at what they said about me in Time. Look at what they said about me in this. And now we understand through other things that he was basically calling these people and telling them what to write.
lying.
The David
Yes,
Pecker type stuff and all that stuff.
right,
So he's literally just building a reality based on executive orders, which are on paper that he can carry around with him and say, look at all the paper, and these press releases from these companies. And it's interesting, like you said, there's 5 or 6 companies in there. And so
yeah,
he had a presser with the Taiwan chip company
yeah,
saying what they were going to invest, and they were with Oracle at the time. And then now they're in part of this, so you're like counting all the things together in buckets,
yeah,
just like he did with the jobs. I mean, the jobs
yeah,
went up, and he claimed those increase of jobs. Then they plummeted from COVID, and then when they
right.
came back, he counted both the beginning and the
Yeah, he
and the
double
second
counted them.
round.
Right. And then when
He
Biden
counted
added on
both
top of them,
ups and none of the middle downs.
right. And he counted them when they were going up in his case, but when they
Right.
went up in Biden's case, he was like, those are just jobs coming back. Right. And you're like, well then asshole, you
Yeah.
don't get credit for those other ones. Anyways, I mean, it's so fucking on the nose. It's so predictable and stupid. And again, my thing is that I just in looking through all this stuff, it is clear to me that no one around him, especially Howard Lutnick, have any of the have the capacity intellectually to deal with any of this shit, to understand it at all, to understand like the Doge guys. Again, hashtag Doge is a heist. The Doge guys are emotionally fucked up and stupid, bigoted, racist, incel dipshits by and large, but they're trained in computer science, which is not
Sure.
an act of intelligence necessarily. You certainly have to have an intelligence capacity to do it, but there are elements of it you can train baseline hacking skills to a lot of people. And if they have a reason for it, you know, like the days of this, I was watching the net, me. Sometimes I, when they show the hacker character and stuff, and there's always that we're in, that shit. And like back in the day, it was like the nerdy black guy in Die Hard who was friggin' awesome, probably one of the best characters in the whole thing. Quarterback is toast. That guy, remember, who breaks into the security system, shuts down the elevators, and he's the guy who knows how to drill through the things. Like he's their tech. Everybody else is just a useless gun carrier, which is very odd. And demo experts, I guess that's the other skill set that Hans Gruber puts together. But there's only one. It used to be a long time ago, and I think that's part of the illusion. Is that at one point there'd be one person on the team who was just masterfully good at at computer hacking or whatever, security systems, and nobody else knew what the fuck things were, and it was a lot of like speak English, to them, which they were speaking English. They were just using whatever. Anyways, and that person would be a highlighted character, and a lot of their intellect would be played up in that storyline like they were one of the fucking infinity crystals, that all you needed was one of those and then you'd have the power to turn back time. And so I think that created this illusion that those kind of people, or people with that kind of skill, are few and far between. And there probably was, they probably were in the early 80s when War Games was made. But thanks to DeVry and Learn to Code and Code Camp and Teen Years, there's a shit ton of rudimentary hackers. And you don't even need to know what they know to understand that if somebody just lets you, okay, the hardest thing about getting in Treasury is breaking through the systems. None of them have the capacity. None of the guys in Doge, can hack their way into Treasury. But they were just let in the fucking front door. So all they had to do was plug a USB thumb drive into something and download a bunch of shit and then put another one in because the guard's been told to stand outside and don't let anybody in. That's not hacking. And it certainly doesn't require some sort of like heightened fucking intellect. But Trump still thinks that.
A lot of the movies that you talk about, they sort of fictionalize this like secret way of clicking the right buttons or getting through the right wires, and then all of a sudden you're going to get in the back door and now you have control of the treasury or something, but as you said, real hacking is almost always phishing related. It's almost always the person.
It's more of a con than it is
it's a con, exactly.
Right. It has more to do with like the art of conning people than it has to do with programming skill.
Yeah,
because what you do is go ahead.
I was going to say the big story of what is it? Spine. I can't remember the name of the worm, but where we brought the worm.
Yeah.
Sputnik.
Sputnik.
It's not Sputnik.
Sputnik. We'll forget about it. But anyways, yes.
Whatever it is. But anyway, they literally got a USB stick in there and somebody plugged it in. Like that's how it got there. There was no like weird secret wire that got him in there, right? So
Stuxnet.
I was going to bring up the same point that these Doge guys are just normal people. Like anybody who can walk in and have full access to a computer system, they can poke around in it and figure out how it works. Like
that's the
you just have to be
fascinating
good
thing.
enough at it. Like they let them in the front door.
Yeah, the inclusion of Elon Musk and his team onto Doge and allowing them to walk the fuck into these places is an admission that they do not have the skill to break into these government systems on their own. Like they literally needed, it had to be an inside job. It was literally, it's like a fucking heist movie where they're like, we can't get past these systems. And it's like, it's okay. We're going to kidnap the manager and we're going to use his card to get in.
Yeah. Or they send the pretty girl to like put something in their bag or something like.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the Mask, right? That's the plot from the fucking Mask, as she goes in and talks to, Jim Carrey's character while her purse is sitting on the thing, filming where the vault and what I don't know where the vault is. Like you can fucking see it. Like it's weird. I don't even know why they had to send it in. Like anyways, point being,
one of my favorite. By the way, one of my favorite stories of this Doge thing was when I saw it. Somebody was going to go to the Federal Reserve and count the gold bars.
Right?
Really? Like really?
and then it, by the way, never happened.
I know, because
that was like a fucking ridiculous week of just idiotic, like, oh my God, what are they going to do? And is it going to be real? And they're going to scratch it and see if it's real. What if it's just lead? And there was like fucking right-wing talking points about it, like conspiracy theory people rolling shit out. Like, get the fuck out of here. And, we're going to go down there and do a chemical test on the gold to see if it's real. Because I don't believe it. It's like, oh my God. Do you think everybody phones in your fucking job the way you do, you assholes? Jesus. So, meanwhile, I mean, this is just, there's so much of this that is just fucking aggravating beyond measure. Meanwhile, while this is going on, there are, regular advances. We've been talking about, and you know how I get fixated on robots. But before I get into that, I'm going to, because so I don't know if you know this, but MIT has a media lab that they allow people to work on on stuff, and you can kind of like you can take classes online through their stuff, and you can they have I have that like a couple of those apps like Coursera and others that you can take actual classes and stuff. So I do that on the regular because I'm weird. And they just started offering one at MIT on their AI system.
Okay.
And yeah. And so that's it. That's in my next up. The problem I have with it is that it starts off very dry with shit we've already covered. Like the problem with it being so new is that unless you're talking about the programming behind it, they know about as much about it as you and I do. Because if you just
Yeah.
pay attention, you're just seeing where the trend is going. It's more like surfing than it is like education because you're just seeing how the waves are coming and you're trying to figure out the height and density of the wave and whether it's surfable or not, or whether you should just wait until the next wave. Like that's where we are in this technology in a lot of ways.
Interestingly, we've been seeing, as many stories as there are of somebody like Musk wanting to invest to build a server farm. There's been similar stories of different companies saying that they were choosing not to invest in that anymore, that they were
Right.
just going to wait. And the idea of us, like in this case, like that AI is going to require massive amounts of server farms, it may or may not be true. And if it is true, the server farm is going to be the commodity, and
Yeah.
uh, and not
Anybody
so
can make one.
it's the code running on it that's going to matter.
Right. Right. So, and can I just say, like, they're when you think of the big models, everybody immediately thinks of OpenAI's ChatGPT as the primary model or their variations. And they have a new one out, 3.0, which is fantastic for coding. It's actually great. Gemini 2.5, you can dial in how much reasoning you want it to do to save yourself
Hmm.
money. If you don't need it to, you can literally go, okay, dedicate all your extra research and your reasoning to the mathematics of this, but building the website, don't bother. Just make something nice. We're
Right.
fine. So it doesn't use equal amount of reasoning for the entire project. So you save a lot on both energy and whatever your inputs are. Claude is now between Claude for education and ChatGPT for education. Both of them have structured these programs to work as virtual tutors for college students, with the future
Hmm.
idea of working its way into high school and then middle school. My kid is 14. He will be in high school next year. And there is no question that within either the first year of his high school or his second year, these things will start to be introduced to any school with actual resources, even if it's just in the computer lab. Like, oh, when your computer class is you learning how to deal with and prompt and interact with AI so that you can use it whatever job you end up doing, whether it's for your
Yep.
scheduling as an assistant or something like that, or it helps you create. Won't matter. You're going to have to practice using it and develop a skill to understand how to use it. He's going to end up doing that. And so MIT, who we love, they're on the cutting edge of a lot of the stuff that we see. They're the ones that are building the models and handing them out to um, you know, labs for medicine research and all kinds of stuff like that. And they started one of these educational creative companions with the idea that they are going to for kids, for young kids, where they will help them learn. So it's the idea is not to give you the answers to the test, but act as inspire them to understand something. And if they're really confused by a portion of it, they go, okay, I see what you're hung up on here. So let's go back to something you know very well. And it's this. You understand how that works? Okay. This is the next step in that. And all you got to remember is there's one added element. That's the kind of thing a real teacher does. It's the kind of thing a tutor does. And
Mhm.
it's the kind of thing most kids can't afford. And so having this as a potential opens up a world of education the same way that books did, right? And we're like, well, they
Absolutely.
have the book, they could just open it, look at the answer. Like, okay, that's no reason to stop kids having books, dummy. Right. So what
I
they
think
started this
that's
program. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think what you're describing there is the tectonic shift. That's the paradigm shift that people need to make when they think about
Yes.
AI, because we've been so long in this like you'll just Google it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Google is sort of find a keyword and search for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've said before, they got good at
Right.
answering questions, but it's still in a sense of search, or it was until they had Gemini, where you would
Mm-hmm.
ask a question and it would pull the keywords out of that. And then you would basically like find something that either people talking about the answer, people talking
Mm-hmm.
about something around it, or like let's say in this, I'm just using an example, like a textbook that explains how to do the math problem, right? Well, with AI, you don't ask the question the same way. You don't learn
Right.
the same way. You actually could come at it by saying, here's the equation that I'm being asked to answer. Can and you can ask it not to answer it, but to explain to you how to go
Yeah.
about answering it. And that's the key. It will answer it for you, and it will explain how it did it as it did it.
Right.
Um, so
And if you
you have
set
to
up
sort
a
of reverse your approach to like moving through the
right.
question.
Well, and that's why they are designing these education specific AIs
Right.
to not just give the answer. They
Right.
literally are trained not to do that. That they need the person that they're working with to interact with them in a way that goes, okay, they're starting to get it. They're starting to explain it back to me where the learning is real. And
Hmm.
Googling it will never do that. Having even a textbook will never do that. The depth of learning that you could get from something like this is shockingly and excitingly new. I'm very bullish on this part of it because it beats the hell out of open book tests or being able to Google an answer or doing the work at home and just looking it up, on the internet and then just copying and pasting it into a document or copying it, longhand. So
Right.
this will be much better for teaching people concepts and stuff. And I have to say, like, I you and I've talked sort of since this stuff started coming, excuse me, online. This is what I've been most excited about because when I don't understand something, I can go, hey, work me through this because wouldn't it be and so a couple of things were like in looking through pieces of legislation where I had suspicions that pieces of legislation have gaps in them or loopholes that would allow for this or that and nobody's talking
Hmm.
about it. So I would go through them and I go, explain this law to me. And then I would go, well, technically speaking, couldn't you do this then without crossing this particular legal threshold? And it'll go, yeah, actually, because there's no, there's no moratorium on this particular kind of behavior within the law itself. That is a very large loophole in the law. Like, and so
Hmm.
I was able to, you know, for my own edification, just like you would listen to a lecture or something, just go, hey, break this down for me. Tell me, in rough ideas so that I know that I have a general idea that's close to what you're talking about. And then afterwards, I go, okay, now I'm still hearing the same problems I heard when I was, thinking about it myself or reading news articles on it. And is that the
Right.
case? And you would never have been able to have access to something like that 3 years ago. Like there's
Right.
just nobody, even with people who are as versed on the ACA as I am, that could go, oh yeah, totally. Page 13, here it is. Like that's, yeah, you're right. That they didn't put that clause in, or that's misspelled, and therefore legally you're in a gray zone. Like that kind of stuff. Like a human eye wouldn't even spot that just because we're too busy. I mean, it's too big and too hard to digest. Now there's no excuse. So again, these maggots who are always saying these bills are too big. Why? There's no excuse anymore. Because if you run these things into, even if they like Grok, or you put it in ChatGPT and you go, here's the text of this bill. I have concerns that it does this. Is that true? Like you don't have to leaf through 30 fucking chapters of it
You
and
can
find,
focus it
yeah,
on a particular part of the bill.
right.
You can literally upload it. I have a story where I was trying to do this like very obscure coding thing inside of the process that I do to do machining,
Yeah.
and I was trying to change like a translator, very obscure. No, like
Hmm.
you would have to find an expert that knew all about it. And I started asking. I literally pasted the whole thing into Chat GPT and started asking it questions. But and this is an example of what I call conceptual translation.
Hmm.
So we think about language as being sort of one to one. Like
Right.
here in the US, I speak English and I say something, there's like a different version of it in France that says the same thing. And for the most part, language is pretty like one to one. There's some concepts that are different, but
Right.
you can say, like, if I said this in English, it'll translate. But conceptually, sometimes it doesn't work, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's this concept of face in China and
Yes.
something else in, I'll use face or Guangxi. Is it Guangxi in China or
Guanxi.
Guangxi? Thank you. Um, so anyway, that's a sort of cultural specific thing and a
Uh,
concept that might work, but inside of these bigger
right.
things, uh, uh, the LLM is able to literally translate concepts. So specifically in this thing I was working on, I could tell while it was analyzing my problem that it was guessing what the thing was called that it was looking for.
Right.
But somebody wrote this and it just wasn't called that. So it couldn't find the thing it was looking for because it just wasn't called what it expected it to be
Right.
called. Does that make sense?
Right.
But that was just
That's a
because
Google problem we have a lot. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so then what I did is I went into the website of the developer of the software and
Mm-hmm.
found a PDF, which was the manual for how to write these things. And it was like a
Mm-hmm.
500-page PDF manual. I literally just uploaded the manual and said, "Can you read the manual and figure out what it's actually called?" And it took a minute, and it realized what it was called in there, and then
Right.
completely changed its translation for everything it was helping me with, now
Mm-hmm.
using that term as the thing that led me
Right.
to the answer.
And I
That
look,
makes sense.
you and I both don't have a problem reading the manual. You and I
Right.
have no doubt. Like
But it takes time.
yes, it does. And a lot of times, if even if you do, you'll read enough to get started on the job you're doing with the idea that you will intuit over time as you learn how the thing works. The different elements of it that have, like, okay, I'll pick up. I don't need this element of it right now. It does this thing, this one trick or this one thing. This happens with music gear all the time. It has a couple of ports on the back of it for MIDI and other stuff that I don't need because I don't need to hook my stuff up to MIDI. I'll figure it out eventually if I need to. But I would never be able to call up fucking Line 6 or Head Rush or any of the companies that, make the gear that I'm using and get somebody on the phone and go, all right, walk me through this whole thing. So I should be able to MIDI control the lights on stage using my guitar rig because of this fucking thing. Like, I know that's a thing.
And it might have been
So
like a developer at their company who just had that idea. Like, if I put this port here, later the
right.
software might support it. And it's possible that that thing could support that, but they never put it in their manuals, right?
Yes.
And so
There's
those are the
tons of
types of
that.
things that you might never know because it just never was written down.
You can
Um,
even have the manual with the schematic in it and go,
right.
using what you know about this thing, tell me 5 things that aren't in the manual that I could conceivably do if I was just routing audio through this thing and mixing it with triggering lights or something like that. Or if I could, I don't know, trigger Siri automations or, home automation stuff using it the same way. So if I was doing a live stream with music and I was using a pedal board, I could trigger other stuff just by switching guitar sounds or something like that. And right,
Hmm.
like it would come up with something like that and go, okay, and then you go, okay, that sounds awesome. That would be useful. Give me a checklist of what I need to do to make that happen in order. That's something that the company never would have considered, that I wouldn't have known it could do because the idea that I would understand like how they wrote the schematic, right? And that it would actually respond the way I want it to is out of the question. So I think that's fucking fantastic is the point I'm trying to make. And the idea is that it teaches you like how to do something and how to learn to do something, but also concepts that were beyond the people who even constructed it in the first place. And so
Yeah.
in
And
a total,
the purpose of the purpose of learning is to do the thing you're trying to do, right?
yes,
So you do you really need to learn how to use this MIDI controller? No, you just want to turn the lights on the stage, right?
right.
But you had to move through this controller, and that's, have you heard this? It's been in the news, but they call it vibe coding. Have you heard that term
Uh-huh.
before?
Oh
Um,
no.
well, it's a new term for vibe coding is like these people that are just having ChatGPT or any LLM make them code and throwing it online and letting it be, right? And
Right.
it's got the sort of like over or undertones of like it's not real. Like it doesn't really count because they didn't do the
Oh,
work.
right.
They don't know how to code. So and so that's coming. Like you can see that.
Yes.
It's just like my kid doesn't use a calculator. They don't know how to do it longhand. Or my kid
Yeah.
used Google and didn't read the encyclopedia. It's the same
Right.
thing we always get into, right?
Totally.
But in the case of coding, in this case, like this vibe coding, like if all you want is the website, and the act of learning to code is to make the website. So if you can skip over the coding part and just
Right.
make the website, why does it matter?
Yes.
Um, and so get the website made and start doing the thing that you meant to do, which is, I don't know, selling your beanie
Yeah.
babies or
Yeah.
saving the
Whatever you're going
world.
to do
Like,
on your website. Right.
yeah, or cure
Well,
cancer. Like,
yeah,
just
exactly.
go do it.
I want to do a fundraiser to raise money to cure cancer, but I can't do it until I figure out how to use Dreamweaver, right?
Right,
I mean, that's
exactly.
welcome to the
Or
90s. What
even
the fuck is that for?
nowadays, Shopify. Like, I mean, some people, or
Right.
Wix, like those are, some people can't figure that out either. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's
Mm-mm.
some people
But
are
it
good
will
at it and
also
some
walk
people
you through
are.
that. Like again,
Right.
you can get past that because if you had a friend like you or I who knows how to use those kind of things, and we came over to your house and we helped you click a couple of things, we're like, that's what that's what you're looking for. Like Gemini does that now. Google's Gemini at its free version, it can watch what you're doing on your screen if you give it permission, and you can go, okay, I don't know how to use this software. Where the fuck is that thing? Like I'm trying to do this one thing and I can't find it in all these goddamn menus. Where is it? And I'll go, oh, I see what you're doing. You need to go to menu that it's not under the file menu where you think it might be. It's under the app window on the actual app window instead of the menus on top. It's in a sub menu over here. Like that kind of
Hmm.
stuff is super helpful. Now, what I was getting to in my own kind of ego feeding that I have to do. And by the way, hi everybody, like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks. Hal Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide. This is Rob Glenn from Root Design in Chicago. Um, this is the show where we show you what's coming, whether you like it or not, in terms of AI and how it's going to change the world we're in. Period. It
Yeah.
is. There's not a matter of
Before you,
if. Yeah. Wait. Nope.
I was
Before
just going to
nothing.
say, before you get to the ego part, there's been a
Yeah.
couple of comments that I want to just make or want to
Sure.
answer real quick. So when I was talking about, when I'm talking and Hal's talking about this, like, just go do it. Why does the coding matter? Then there was a couple comments about, well, I'm a coder. I learned how to code. It doesn't matter
Right.
anymore, but it does.
Yes.
And so to be an expert in something is still important.
Hmm.
It's just the understanding that the thing that you're doing, like if you understand how to do it better, then you should be able to be even better again when you're augmented with some AI
Right.
tools, right? But another person who hasn't done that education, they can do the thing that's good enough. And that's what I keep
Yes.
talking about. Like
Right.
they do the good enough thing, you do the expert thing. So there's
Hmm.
certain things that you want to be a little better than good enough, like the IRS's system,
Yes.
or
Right. Or
or
the security system at any banking system or transactional
there
system,
you go, right,
or elements of like how you get your house deed on and off the blockchain, and or use the blockchain to verify it, or those kind of things. Like there, all it is that the skill level of programmers and stuff will grow along with the comfort level of everybody that you can assume. And the Dreamweaver reference I was making, for those back in the day, that was one of the first sort of like position and paste web design building things, but you still had to do a certain amount of HTML. You had to still
mhm,
do a certain amount of coding to make your buttons work and the like. And so there were guys who used to do web pages literally from scratch, and they would have to code them through actual typing, and they looked like shit. They looked like, bulletin boards in the early 90s, because making them look any better was a pain in the ass and didn't improve the function of them to in balance with how much work it took. So nobody
right,
bothered. It wasn't that they wouldn't like it to look better. It's just, fuck, man. I don't know, like, I don't know, put a header, the image across there. That I did that. I don't need a footer image. I don't need the buttons to look like anything. You understand what they are. There's an on and off aspect. It lights up if it's on, and if it's off, it's dark. That's all. I'm not going to spend all fucking day. Let's just start chatting, right? That's essentially what
Right.
happened with these IRQ
So
chats.
that person who doesn't know enough or doesn't have the time to learn more, they would go
Yeah,
onto Wix or Shopify and use just like whatever the stock
right.
site is or whatever the choices they have.
That's
And
right.
then when they get there and they're like, I really like 90% of this, but I really wish there was this one or two other things. That's when
Right.
the expert comes in and they
Hmm.
use the base model of whatever Wix or
Right.
Shopify or
Yeah,
whatever
you
the
don't have to
system
bring.
is.
You don't have to start from scratch with everybody.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's where your skill comes in when it's useful instead of like it's like when like a plumber comes it's like if a plumber had to come in and teach you how to turn on the tap every time. Like literally
There
how
we
to
go.
turn your sink on, right? You should be there used to be a point where if you wanted water in the house, you had to run a pipe yourself off that thing or whatever, and you couldn't just go to Home Depot and buy a fucking yard pump to get water into the house. You for a faucet, you'd have to shut that thing and open it like with a wrench, essentially. Well, to get water into the house or out of the house. This is the same kind of thing. Like we're well past that now. We not only do we have faucets that we can turn on and off, we can choose how much hot water and cold water based on them. Or now you can even have shower setups where it's set at a certain temperature because it will be an automatic mix. You figure out what the mix is, you move that thing there, and then you flip a switch to turn the shower on and off because you know you want it the same temperature every time. You don't have to dial it in like a fucking AM radio, you know, like so like we don't want to bother the Boston Bryans of the world coming in trying to you like, that gives you hot, ma'am. That'll give you cold. Like, it's the same kind of thing. Like, and you go, well, I learned plumbing. You're like, yes, but we need you when things break or need improvement or go beyond what's commercially available. That's the truth there. Okay, so let's get, before my ego takes a dent, I have to show you this.
Yeah, you better get on this, man.
Yes. So, MIT has come up with something called the student's personal assistant and reinforcing knowledge and innovation. So, student's personal assistant for reinforcing knowledge and innovation, or hold on,
Spark?
Sparki.
Sparky.
Sparki, an interactive learning companion for AI education. Now, Sparki is my dad's nickname. It is not my nickname, but I'll take it where I can get it. But this is the kind of thing that like it showed up in my feed. You wouldn't be surprised to at
Yeah.
all.
Well, no wonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Sparky is designed kind of based on the idea that I was telling you, like that they're doing with ChatGPT and Harvard and Claude and the education system. They're working at like Northeastern and Northwestern University. That they're doing these university and college level things for dense projects and study, and like stuff that involves a shit ton of data and the kind of thing where like if you have a shit lab partner, you might not get your doctorate because you're on the wrong team. That used to be a real problem at these schools because there's a limited number of like the high echelon people and they're all competing for a limited number of spots at companies and that kind of stuff. So at the super genius level at a lot of these schools, there's reason for somebody to even undermine you or just blow your project off while they focus on their own.
Hmm.
So these systems are going to be great for helping the research support that they might need, that they might offload to somebody else or use. In the past, they'd have to go down and fucking scroll through newspapers and articles on microfiche. Now they can do it this way. But this is for grade school. So it is a creative companion. We position Sparky as a collaborator with students rather than a mentor or tutor. It promotes creative thinking by providing feedback on students' work and showing interest in their ideas. It is a coding assistant, uses GPT-3 to deliver personalized tutorials and discuss example programs in Scratch programming language. So it teaches you how to use code and because they're entering this in, like I said, the first of these is going to be entered into computer labs. That the first real learning tutor that you're going to see in schools is going to be like, you won't use it all day. You'll only be able to access it in the computer lab, and then it will springboard forward because you're like, why can't I use this in my language class? Because I could talk for hours with it in the language I'm learning, and it will teach me words as if I was immersed in the actual culture. And they'll go, I don't know, there's not a real good reason to say no. And then it will start to spread very quickly. And then AI design feedback, it can discuss their design goals, potential impacts, and the relevant stakeholders of AI projects, encouraging students' critical thinking. But the important thing is again, it's not designed to make them rely on it. So we took several considerations into account, ensuring the well-being of the intended children using Sparki, which would be avoiding over-reliance. It relies on vetted knowledge base, warns users when answers are totally generated and potentially inaccurate, which, a lot of them, we have these, which was a bigger issue in the beginning and is less of an issue now. Avoiding misuse. The functionality of GPT is limited to short discourses about programming and AI specifically. Its inclusivity for kids. It's very sensitive to spelling and grammar mistakes. Uses spell check tools to clean up their text and protecting their privacy. It warns users not to input personal information that may be collected by that one. It's a beta thing that they're doing. You can, it's on GitHub. And so schools can download it and do pilot programs on their own and then reinforce it. So that brings us to GitHub. Now, GitHub, like Hugging Face, is one of these places where people put open source pieces of software or AI models that they want to allow people to use, and projects that students do. So a lot of students will create something and they'll put it in there for people to play with if it's just not their real project, but they did it as an exercise. So they're effectively they get homework, programming homework or design homework, and they work with the AI to do it, or they work with their own coding to do it. And instead of it going into the ether like homework used to, they can post it on GitHub, and then it becomes a product or an open source thing structure to build on because they haven't fully worked out all the bugs maybe, and other people can work on it if they like the idea. And then eventually it may turn into a real thing. And because it's attributed to them, if it became commercially viable, or if somebody said, hey, we want to use the root code to this student who may have just had their idea ripped off in the past can now have credit both in school and out for the work that they have done. And that's yet another extraordinary thing that has just popped up in the last few years in this. I think my favorite one right now is Junkyard Jumbotron, which is it's a web tool that combines a bunch of random displays into a single large virtual display. So you can take everybody's, you can take phones and monitors and stuff in an area, and then just basically it kind of hijacks not quite hijacks, but you know what I mean. It's Spartacus. It's from The Recruit. If you ever saw the movie The Recruit with Colin Farrell, yeah, that he was part of a group of programmers, and what they figured out how to do was to hijack all the feeds around them and put whatever their feed is on all the screens around, right? And they called it Spartacus because it democratized the screens, whatever. This is basically. This is Spartacus. Junkyard Jumbotron is their own version of this. But there are a ton of these things, and many of these you'll find that students. There's a repository for a study. Can AI solve the peer review crisis? A large-scale experiment on LLM's performance and biases in evaluating economic papers. So the issue, somebody saw an issue. Can AI peer review stuff, or will it make mistakes? And just like people do, will it be better or worse? And so people can take their work, develop an AI, an LLM, that is one of their research ones, have it peer review something, compare it to the peer reviews, because you can do all the past peer reviewed stuff and check how it did and how true it turned out to be. And you could post that and go, hey, I ran this through my AI and it actually peer reviewed it similar to what, in 1985, what they actually discovered, except it was right about some things that they didn't know back then because it has access to stuff now, but it also made a better guess about how effective this thing would be. and or it totally egged it and it made shit up and it was terrible, so I needed to work on it. But these are tools that 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 are just available on the MIT site. There are
Mhm.
18 pages of these, like, um a news classifying program. Like, there's a bunch of these. And you can tell, by the way, you know what's fun is if you look on here, you can tell what the assignment was in the class by the day or the month, because they will go through and you'll see a bunch like news flow. This one up, Chronica, the like Newsjack, news classifier, truth goggles. These were all things like develop a program that can tell you whether a news story is biased or truthful or those kind of things. And then you could tell they did that class at MIT. And that was the project that the teacher handed out, because during that window of time, there will be a shit ton of programs coming out in Python or Java or, AI addendums. It's pretty hilarious. You could kind of like wink in the nod at what they were doing, 8 months ago or whatever. And multiple versions of the same thing. Like, we're all going to make this program and you guys need to adapt it to different formats. So your job today
Mhm.
will be to take this program that everybody has and you'll turn it into one for Apple, one for Android, one for Linux, one for Microsoft, whatever, that kind of thing. So you can see them actually do it. It's pretty spectacular. Um, and yeah, anyways, so I'm a big fan of like nerding through the MIT site, but the important thing though is that GitHub itself, see if they can go into here because I don't need to sign into this. Yeah. So even GitHub right now, so GitHub was a thing where you could code essentially. It's like a place where people who go to code post their stuff, their work in the middle of their process or while they're working on it, or as an environment to write and test code in, because you can it's a development environment too. So it's like putting your piranha in a fishbowl and you're like,
Well, it's
make
it's
you
like a it's like a project management tool, kind of sort of, in the
yes,
sense that you can collaborate on code base, like a set of codes or like a set of
yes,
files. Let's say you were like in Google Docs and you
yes,
were writing something together, and there were 5 or 6 authors working together.
right,
Um, it's a place, like a cloud-based place, kind of sort of, where all those versions exist, and you
right,
can collaborate. You can work together. You can version things up and
yes,
down, as you release things. If something comes to a point where you want other people to try it, and then they
hmm,
try it, they can give you feedback, and then they can help you fix the bugs. It's kind of like this group project management for coding kind of tool, sort of
yeah.
thing.
And you could part of the thing is like it's an environment where you can test it in on virtual machines that won't break out. And if you're creating some sort of piece of software and you're worried that it will gather information you don't want it to gather quite yet, or start operating in a real environment and screw with where you are because you're not along, and it might
Yeah.
start an automated process and screw things up. You can do it in a fishbowl, and that's until you're ready to beta it or pilot it or any of those kind of things. And so there's a lot of smart stuff on there. There's a lot of real commercial shit being done there. There's a lot of goofy shit and practice stuff going there. I have an account there where I just dick around, and I would argue that when Rob's talking about vibe coding, that's probably what my account is for, because right. So
uh,
because yeah,
when I
I
was
have go
younger,
ahead. Yeah.
people called other people script kiddies, I think was a term, where you're basically
Uh-huh.
just taking chunks of other people's code, copy pasting
Right.
them together and making something else, and you didn't necessarily understand what you were doing, but you just got the right answer at the end, or it worked maybe at the end.
Yes.
Um, but like, I would, maybe a better or good another addendum to the explanation of GitHub would be like a Wikipedia for code.
Yes.
It's like a place where all versions are stored of work that's being done there. So it's like a database or repository for that. Somebody
Right.
in the chat called it a repository for code.
Yes.
That's a good way. But there's other functions like communication, like people talking to each other, and you know, comments and notes and things like that kind of all exist together there. Even people that do like physical development can use GitHub. Like a lot of the people that were part of the development of like RepRat, which became Prusa 3D printers.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the versioning of those files and stuff like that existed also on GitHub. So
Right.
um, it's been around forever, and it's a great place. I've always wondered, like, to me, the user interface and the sort of experience of using a site like GitHub is like pretty
Yeah.
clunky, and I've always wondered, like, who's going to come up with this sort of next version. Like
Oh,
Windows was like this crazy paradigm shift from, writing code by hand like in DOS to then
right.
well, I mean,
Well,
Mac had it
let me show
first,
you.
I
Let
guess
me
you
show
could
you what I'm
say, but
talking about. And so this
yeah.
goes to the whole like Trump and his crowd don't know shit, and they don't understand how code jacking, or I don't know what was the phrase you used for
Script kiddie, I said.
strip
That's
kitties.
old
Yes,
term.
right, right. That that like and code jacking is the easiest way, like just borrowing open source shit for your own purposes and the like. But there's a thing on now on GitHub called Copilot for Xcode, or I mean, it's
Mhm.
actually for whatever programming setup you use. And see if I can open this up. Okay,
VS Code from Microsoft just got
right,
an update to their assistant.
yeah. So let me show you this real quick. Um, Fast Track AI app development. Get the team readiness toolkit. Yeah, just got this in your email. Andrea's getting her phone is listening to the conversation while we're talking about this. But let me show you something real quick. So if you code on a Mac, you can use Xcode, which by the way now ChatGPT can have access to if you want to code within it. Right? You can use ChatGPT and it will open, if you have Xcode on your machine, it will open it up and you can do your coding in Xcode, and it will effectively, like, you could talk to it back and forth. You can vibe code using the actual coding program instead of having to have like a code app built into ChatGPT. Their idea was, why don't we just use a really well-rounded one, and then we'll interact with it the same way you do. You just give us permission to interact with it, and there off you go. So this is Copilot for Xcode from GitHub. So GitHub has a thing where you can download Copilot for Xcode into your Xcode that you use, and then you obviously have access to all your software and shit that you're working on, all your products, that your projects that you're working on, and then do your own writing and sessions, whatever. But in this, you have access to all their packages that help with coding built into it automatically. So you can start coding alongside this one. You could also arguably do both. So in theory, you could run ChatGPT looking at Xcode. You could start coding with that. Copilot for GitHub would sort of look at it like it's you typing all of it, and then if you needed any help, it could add stuff, and you could. As far as ChatGPT is concerned, you have a partner who's helping you code it, and so they would just work it out between themselves, and you could set them on a task to create something, and between the two coding setups, they could just work out all the shit if you set clear enough parameters of the kind of software you're writing. That's
Mhm.
already here, is my point, which says to me that there's nothing special about the Doge guys anymore, and that we're really just dealing with a bunch of fucking crooks running around, and that everybody has this illusion of intelligence that's not even necessary within the content of what they are doing, and they are it's almost as like they've seen the writing on the wall that their jobs are obsolete in the very near future, so they're just going to rob everybody blind and split. leave the country. Like, we're going to be out of a job here. We should just embezzle a bunch of money from the company and leave. That's the moral equivalent of what you're seeing here with Doge.
Well, I've in my work and in a lot of business people in the business that I know that sell things and things like that, like you'll find
Yeah.
in very large corporations, the hurdles to start selling into them are are things like getting set up as a vendor in their payment system, or
Right.
there's like all these things that are like, you would call it like red tape or paperwork, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just basically like they have a system and you're trying to get in. Well, the government's version of that system is a little bit bigger or harder to get through because they have rules like you need 3 bids for everything, or
Because you should,
sometimes
to avoid.
Congress, which yeah,
Yes.
for government you should, and sometimes Congress gets in the way and makes things even more complicated. So the
Mm-hmm.
way I look at Doge is they effectively want to sort of plant their flag inside the building and get it enough there that it's going to be really hard for other vendors to come in
Yes.
and unseat them. And because
Right.
once they're there, it's hard to get there, but once you're there, right?
Right.
Like
Well, that's
Boeing
what
is
they're
not
finding
going
out.
away.
That's what they're finding
What's
out.
that?
They're finding out that even though they want to come in there and lay in their system, it's going to
Right,
take an act of Congress, and you're going to have
right,
oversight. So for Elon Musk to get these fucking contracts for real, he's going to have to go through the process of Congress, who still controls the purse strings, agreeing that this is cheaper and safer. And if it's
right,
one and not the other, they're going to tell him to go fuck himself. And if he's put pieces of software in there without permission, that's a crime
right. And
by all measures.
I see his play as get in there, and because just you got Trump and he's got cover for
Right.
whatever reason, in the world today, he was allowed to walk into these buildings with a group of people that could plug into the computer system, right? And
Yes.
then he's basically like getting in a position where he can pull the levers, and then whether or not this is true, maybe he breaks it, or he just like uh advertises the fact that it's complicated and it doesn't work well, and then he's just there within that first 4 years to say, well, I'll be the one that fixes it, and we have to fix it now because it's so bad
Right.
that it's an emergency, which everything Trump is doing is under this concept of an
Emer-
emergency,
right.
right? So the purpose of that is it's just like the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
If not for 9/11, the Patriot Act on its own would never
Right.
pass. It
It's like
passed
all
in this
Patriot Act all the time. Yes.
right. It passed because of the emergency, and then once it was there, it's very hard to turn back off, right? So
Right.
that's the same thing that I think is part of this play. And I mean, but the thing you're seeing this sort of, you know, Twitter level, like social media communication amongst all the people trying to like fight for the position. And that's something we've never seen before. It's never been out in the open like this, or it's never been manipulated in the public the
Mm-hmm.
way it is right now. If Boeing
Right.
and McDonnell Douglas were fighting to get the next joint strike fighter, they wouldn't be like, uh, you know, complaining about how the others look what they look like on social media, or they wouldn't be meeting at UFC fights and like trying to look tougher than the other one, like
Right.
that's the difference between now and then, right? I guess so. But as you say, like you get in there and you can't, if you turn off the system, one of two things is going to happen. Either it is a crime, and eventually somebody, like I said last
Yeah.
week, like gravity still exists. There's
Yeah.
still laws, and
Right.
it's going to catch up to you at some point. Or you break the system and a whole bunch of people don't get their social securities checks, and that's
Uh-huh.
probably an accident, but it's on purpose because they're meddling. So it's their
Right.
fault, but still they screwed up.
You are
And
at
now
fault and legally responsible for it, and you are a special government employee while it happened, so your
right.
responsibility is trackable to it. Whereas some of the other Doge guys might pretend that they were never in the fucking room. I would argue that both are occurring, that you will both
Oh,
see
absolutely.
criminal acts and incompetence running in parallel, that they will be, civilly sued for the fuck ups they create and legally responsible for the crimes they commit.
And
And yeah,
that's in effect what this Hegseth stuff probably is. It's
right,
probably some guy running his mouth off in because he thought he was cool because he was able to summon Elon Musk to the Pentagon and he's bragging
right.
about it.
Yes.
It's probably that simple, you know?
Well, I want to talk about a couple of things in line with this, which is Trump has in his budget request, while he's trying to cut all this money from stuff, is saying he's going to double the investment in key industries of the future, namely AI, non-defense R&D research. Okay. The Chips and Science Act was the biggest addition of this kind of non-defense industrial spending for the development of AI technologies and the like that we've ever seen. And Trump's budget seeks to double it. That's all. I mean, that's what he does. Like, he just doubles it and calls it a day. He's not thinking it through at all, but it doesn't matter. The point is that he's not cutting anything. And if anything, he's doubling down on what the CHIPS Act did. Everything that Trump has announced as far as AI or technology is saying CHIPS Act plus, not that the CHIPS Act was terrible. He's actually funding more of this stuff. And by doubling the AI research and development and infrastructure, by doubling that amount, he's basically the same seed money he was decrying. They're paying billions of dollars to these big companies to come do this, and you don't even have to. Yes, you do. And so he's doubling that amount. Their loan guarantees, they're just going to double it. The amount of seed money, they're just going to double it. That's what he wants in his budget. And so, again, conceptually, this is all, by the way, dreamed up right about the time the DeepSeek thing was happening, and nobody knew what the cost was going to be, and everybody's talking about the energy usage of AI, as if in the next 2 years AI itself won't come up with better ways to power itself, because that's one of its best traits, is that they're already looking for ways to, like, how do we lower the power input? Like, well, you could make my chips out of this, dum-dum, is essentially what you're getting from
I mean,
AI.
my contention and prediction is that the big, huge monolithic models are not where the bulk of your money is going to be made in AI, like down
Right.
in the future.
It's going to
going to be in
bespoke,
very
local.
focused, smaller, local stuff. And so, because tasks, like the reason to use it is for some form of productivity. And when you're in a situation that requires a specific focus of productivity, you know, like you're putting together an automated factory of robots, you don't need to know all the other stuff in the English language and all the other concepts in the in all of time, right? All you need to know is about the robots and the thing you're doing. And so it's so much more efficient and focused and easier to run. Like, you don't need the same level of hardware that these guys are putting together. So everything we're seeing right now is the, like, front end bleeding edge R&D, and it's being sold to us as that's the solution. And we're not sort of seeing, like, you know, when we went to the moon, it wasn't going to the moon that we benefit from. It was all the stuff that they invented while going to the moon. And it's going to be the same thing, like, that's happening with AI.
Right. I would argue that, like, LA will have its own AI, New York will have its own AI, and City Hall will have a trained AI that they use for the legal stuff that goes on in the city and the coordination of services and, emergency response systems and the like. I want to show you a couple of things technology-wise, because, before we get too far along in the show, and if there's any questions, by the way, that people have for us, feel free to put them in the chat. Oh, Boston Brian says, this is because they've seen people get away with brazen crimes only to be pardoned by the corrupt leader. Yeah, I think in terms of Doge and what they think is going to happen, the problem with that is, and I think you're right, I think he's going to pardon a bunch of these people. But if they embarrass him, what's going to happen is he'd pardon Elon Musk, but the relatively nameless Doge dudes are fucked, because they'll throw them under the bus in a heartbeat. That's what I think.
Yeah, everything about him is so fleeting. Like you can't nail anything down, and like that's
Right.
both his what he thinks is his advantage, but also it's going to be his downfall. Like you you know, and like we've always talked about, like businesses want stability, and it's just this sort of idea that nobody really grasps, and but we're sort of feeling what that is right now, where
Right.
they just
Oh,
decide. I
can
mean,
I?
I know that you show these
I
like
can't.
uh
I can't believe I
statements that
used.
they're going to invest, but businesses aren't wanting to invest right now. They're just going to
Okay.
wait until he's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they can use that as leverage. It's not only a bad idea
Exactly.
to invest right now, but it also works as leverage against him in the meantime. And you don't have to do it because you're like, fuck Trump. You can just go, I can't afford it. I don't know what to tell you. Shit's expensive. Like they have enough excuses where he can't even like shame and blame the way he chooses to. And can I show you something in this? Fucking drove me crazy. I
Yeah,
couldn't
sure.
like it's so on the fucking nose. Let me blow this up so people can see. Okay. The president's fiscal year 2021 budget includes a significant. This is his. This is the where we go. This is the President Trump's fiscal
2021.
year 20. Yeah, this is what he was gonna do in 2020. This is the fiscal year 2021 budget includes a significant increase in non-defense AI R&D compared to the 2020 budget and is on path to double non-defense AI R&D by 2022. This was where Trump was going back then. This was just like their own shit, right? They were like what he was committing to do. This is in February of 2020 and what they were rolling for. This is before ChatGPT and all this stuff was really making a breakthrough, right? This was before any of this stuff started hitting, and it had nothing to do with his understanding of it. They were already investing. They were going to put 142.2 billion federal research and development R&D, a 6% increase over his federal year 2020 budget. This is why we had the Chips and Science Act, because that a 6% increase wasn't going to do shit in a global arms race for AI. This is how sort of like behind the eight ball they were now. Now he's claiming that all this investment. Oh, God, this is a historical mirror. Updated links to the external website. Oh, that's cool. This is Trump White House archive.gov. That you could tell at this time they were like they were just flicking things like, okay, look, I just want a little more money to spend, a little bit more money to spend. There was no forward looking element of it at all. And here, hold on one second. Where are we? There we go. Back to here. And then I want to show you his Trump announcement. Yeah. Is this the, yeah. Yeah. So this is the new one. Now, that one was about like, piece by piece, he was that was his budget proposal for actual dollars, right? Okay. And to your point about everything's a fucking just a PR thing, it's just everything's a press release. This is what he put out this year. Removing barriers, scroll this down to you. Removing barriers to American leadership in artificial intelligence. Right? Just like before, it was like, actual budgeted stuff or whatever. Now, and that's before ChatGPT and all this stuff started happening. And now we know it's happening. And now we know where the funding should go. We know we should be funding universities, especially places like Harvard and MIT and these places where he's cutting funding because he's mad. By the
Yeah, the
authority vested in his
barriers are
rather
he's
about
cutting funding.
right. Purpose. The United States has long been at the forefront of AI. And telling you, okay, this is just like whatever. Policy. It is the policy of the United States to sustain and enhance America's global AI dominance in order to promote human flourishing, economic competitiveness, and national security. Section 3, definition. Section 4, whatever. Implementation of order revocation. The APST, the Special Advisory for AI and Crypto. That's that dipshit that he has, and it shall immediately review. Oh my God! It's so, aren't you glad we're getting past like bureaucratic politispeak? Will immediately review in coordination with the heads of all the agencies they deem relevant all policies, directives, regulations, orders, and other actions taken pursuant to the revoked executive order the safe, secure, and trustworthy development of use of artificial intelligence. So what this is about was just revoking Biden's AI rules which weren't even rules because it's an executive order. They were like a guidance from the presidency about like where companies should and shouldn't go, especially if you in the future you want government contracts.
Like
you
putting
kind of want to be
guardrails
in, yeah, you got to have some level of safety or whatever. So that was just him repealing that general. And then my favorite part of all of his executive orders, and I want you to know that these are rubber stamped on the end of all of them. General provision. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority granted by law to an executive department or agency or the head thereof, or the functions of the director of management budget relating to budgetary, affirmative, or legislative proposal. This order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. This order is not intended to, does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law, or in equity by any party against the United States, its department, agencies, entities. Okay, this little piece of like legalese is at the end of all of his executive orders because that shows you the limitations of what they're for. This is about discretionary budget shit. It is only the stuff that's within his power, and it does not create a law or right or benefit. Doesn't.
Well, this
None of
is
them
my
do.
point. Like this entire piece
Useless.
of paper is useless except for up at the top it says American leadership and AI. And in Trump's mind, he just
Right.
wants 25 pieces of paper that say America great AI, America great, whatever
Make
the
AI
thing
great
is.
again.
Oh, hello there.
Like it's
America
so
great
stupid.
low gas prices. America
Yes.
great
Yeah.
eggs or save eggs. I don't know. Like
Okay,
whatever.
what do we got? Is a big one, huh? It's a big one, huh? And then the guy's like, Mr. President, what we have for you to sign right now is page 472 of Project 2025. We just tore 2 pages out because you needed something to sign. This states that it is the position of the United States of America that red, white, and blue are the most awesomest colors in the history of the visual light spectrum. Huh? And then you never, huh? Oh, like that's his days. And I swear to God, like, okay, so before we get all tore up on just how fucking
like
stupid they are,
this stuff is. Did you have some stuff for tech
robot
like,
stuff.
I'm,
Yes,
I'm
I
sure
do.
you got like 3 or 4 pages of robots in back there somewhere.
All right.
I mean, this
Stop
Trump
picking
stuff
on
is
me.
so it's like he's supposedly the most important person in the world, and nothing he says has any meaning. Like he
Any
doesn't
value.
even follow his own rules.
Right.
Oh, hello there.
Like it's so dumb. It's so dumb. Today, we're declaring the
Illudium Q-36 explosive space modulator.
Act of 2020, whatever. Like he actually, the funny thing is he actually thinks he's signing laws when he talks.
Does, and
that's how stupid he is.
But they're useless.
All right, let me show you a couple of things. Now, one, let's start with the Eisenhower purge of immigrants back in the day in 1953. I have pointed out, rightly so, that the big reason behind it was not some sort of renewed abject racism that just kind of popped up out of nowhere, but because of the number of idle men sitting around, because of the influx of tractors and plows and threshers within a 5-year period that went from hand plows in most farms to the average farm having a tractor that pulled a plow behind it that could do 3 rows minimum, if not 5, within a 5-year period of time. So within 5 years, you needed all these men to do this shit. And then in 5 years, you didn't need any of them. So the repatriation and the kicking out of people that Eisenhower went through, there was a reasoning behind it. Right, that these people had been brought in or were needed as migrant workers during during like planting season, but they weren't needed anymore, and so they shuffled them out. And I would argue that there are a lot of areas, whether it's fast food, where they have taken the number of people necessary to do work at a McDonald's because of the machinery and the timing and all that kind of stuff, down from 8 people to 6 to 4. At most places, they've literally cut it in half. Somebody's on janitorial on rotation, the newest employee usually, which they used to have a separate person do. That person is no longer there. immigrants used to pick up that slack first, right? Or they were doing food prep, or they were doing janitorial stuff, and they would get paid under the table in restaurants and diners all across the country. There are devices that are allowing people to do that a lot quicker, and so they're replacing them, and that is happening at a big clip. But one of the biggest points, and this is kind of where there's a renewed aspect of this. Okay, so do you know what feed pushing is on a farm or at a like an agricultural farm? It's
Sorry, what did
so
you say?
feed pushing. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, if folks, if you don't know what feed pushing is, like if you have a row of cows or a row of animals and their heads in a little thing, and you put food in a trough in front of them, or you put it on the ground in front of them, they'll eat it, and then somebody has to come along and push that food towards them. So the rest of the pile moves towards them, so they eat all of it, right? It's like they don't have a, they can't reach past a certain point, so because they eat through a fence basically. Here, I'll show you. There's these these little tractors right here. Now you'll notice there's a steering wheel, but there's no guy. That's because Monarch Tractors has created autonomous feed pushing robots that you just attach to your ATV food pusher, your feed pusher, on top of it. Just run it. It'll just, because it just uses the machine. It knows what the levers are, and you just literally like hook it up to the steering wheel. It has a little thing. You hook it up to the gear box on it, and it will turn itself on and off. Go out there on a regular. It knows the route like a Roomba, and it will push the feed. And now you don't need a guy doing that anymore. Whether it's you because it's your farm, or a farm hand, or a kid, whatever it is, you don't need that person anymore. And the next time you buy one of these things, it's not going to be this thing. It's just going to be that and this little piece of gear with wheels.
Yeah, most things are going to start
Right.
augmented. In this case, you can
Right.
take over the wheel.
In
and
the same way that like
become,
auto drive cars, where they're
Yeah,
going to eventually, they talk about like the Zoomy or whatever, we see them around here in Vegas, the little, like, they look like
Mhm.
little trolley cars, but they're technically cars, but there's no driver. They're like a little bus thing that goes around, and it can go to your address, pick you up, take you wherever, but there's no steering wheel at all. Like, they've gone
Mhm.
from autonomous driving with augmenting a human to eliminating it entirely. I
Yeah,
still don't
these
know
are
how I feel
good
about that,
proving.
but
Yeah, these are good
yeah,
proving grounds, like out in a farm, because it's wide open. There's,
exactly.
if something goes wrong, like not a lot of problems. I mean, you break the thing, but
Right.
like it's not catastrophic.
I'm going to show the
So these are
Palo Alto
great
thing,
places
Gino.
for
Hold
these
on.
to happen.
Yeah.
What's that?
So we're going to end with the Palo Alto crosswalks. I don't know if you know that story.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have not
Yeah.
seen that story. You want to
Okay,
jump to
good.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. No. We'll do it at the end. The next thing I want to show everybody is this, which
Oh,
is the next stage of this. So this is a fully autonomous tactical vehicle from a company called Overland AI. And I'm leaving the music off because I'm sure it's some macho bullshit. That they've gotten from Nickelback or from Limp Bizkit or something. But it is a carrier robot that has LiDAR on the top of it. It's effectively, and again, this is very similar to what we're kind of talking about here, where they take the vehicle, they just remove the steering wheel, and then this thing is basically a wagon that brings the shit to you and then runs stuff back. So it can take
yeah,
soldiers. Like, if you have one of the problems that used to have, and uh, Phil Bittner brought this up last time we were talking about a double tap, which is what the Russians do, which is you wound soldiers, and then when other soldiers come in to get them, you kill those guys. So, because you don't give a shit, you'll leave your guys behind, but they don't. So you use that against them. Or like when somebody, it does an explosion or something like that to draw firemen in, and then they shoot the firemen when they show up. Like, we've had terrorists do that in the past. We've had psychos do it in the past. Well, the idea in this is that you can send this in. If somebody can actually still move, but they're wounded, they can climb into this thing and it will drive them out. So even if it fails, you've only lost a piece of gear, not another soldier, not another person. But this thing, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Different logistical add-ons. It will fly drones. It'll pop. It can go out in the middle of nowhere, pop a drone, and drive back so that your drone operators don't get killed. And all this stuff is on the Ukraine side of things. Like,
there's some Russian stuff, but most of it is. Now,
their stuff is
I looked.
terrible.
It's kind of a dark way to say it, but again, this is a great proving ground because if it
Yes.
screws up and runs over a soldier from the enemy, like that's kind of the purpose of war anyway, right? Like
Right.
you're like a lot of these things are like, what happens when it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, right?
Right. When it breaks, will it hurt
When
a
it's an
civilian? Right.
autonomous taxi running around downtown Las Vegas on the strip, if it
Mhm.
makes a mistake and runs over 100 people, like that's a problem, right? But
Yeah.
out in the farm and out in the war zone, these are great proving grounds for
Well,
technology.
that's where this phrase is the
Right.
defining, I think, the area of where robotics and to some degree AI in terms of mathematical and data contemplation that would drive a human being crazy if they spent 100 years trying to sift through data to try and find the pattern that exists there because they can't look at it all at once because they're mortal. They need to eat and sleep and shit and have lives.
Yeah.
And that on a data level, the AI can do that. On a robot level, this is what this is for. And this is why I was saying to people like who were and are Bernie fans is that I had no problem with the idea of voting for Bernie back in the day, even though I supported Hillary. If he was the nominee, I'd have no problem voting for him. My worry more than anything was that there would be people who would turn on him the first time he did a drone strike, because at some point you're going to get a bad choice as president, something you're going to have to do. You're going to have to choose between a few dead people and a lot of dead people, the trolley car conundrum that they all face at some point. And he is going to, they're going to go, we can send in 10 guys or we can send in a drone. And a drone never comes back in a flag draped coffin. And as much as you may not like the sound of it, it beats the shit out of going down there and standing there as they unload coffins from a thing for the very same action. So the idea that he never would do it is absurd. So when he did it, it would happen, even if I think he had the same rules of engagement that Obama had, or even tighter ones. There's still a chance civilians would die in the process because it's war, it's dangerous. Peacekeeping in Africa, wherever it was, that there's always a danger of that. He would always go to that. Almost everybody, from this point on, any president where you're like, we can send people or we can send in a robot, like Reaper drones, whatever they are, you're going to send the drone because nobody mourns a drone. That's it. I mean, that's the main reason, right? And that's going to increase over time. For the countries that have the means, that's going to increase. The difference is, like, Russia doesn't give a shit. They mourn the loss of their gear and the money it would cost more than they mourn their soldiers. So they will be behind the 8 ball in designing this kind of shit, because why bother? We've got the men. We don't care. We'd rather burn through them than burn through the money and the development to create these things. We've been in an arms race before with nukes, and if we never end up using it, it's a waste of money. But men, you can use them for a lot of different shit. This is not going to work in a
Yeah.
factory on the weekends.
So in this case, they work for you. It's an advantage for Ukraine because they have there's more Russians than there are Ukrainians, and Russia
Yes.
can just send people at it, just like you said. So they're changing they're getting more symmetry by adding drones to the mix. But if let's say that they were the same in size and they were just sending drones at each other, then it
Mm-hmm.
effectively becomes a resource war or a supply chain war or a technology war. Like if human life
Yeah.
isn't a thing because you're just drone versus drone,
Yeah.
then it's almost like you need to redefine what the purpose of the war is to begin with, right?
Right.
Like so and we're almost there where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the absurdity right now, I think, comes from the fact that that people aren't actually applying goals anymore. You know, like why did we go to Iraq, right? Like at least they were lying about it, but there was like a to get us there, there was a goal. They said they had
Right.
WMDs, we need to get rid of them, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, it was this changing goal. But up until Trump, maybe there was always a reason. Like
Right.
they had to come out and
Even if it
sell
was a
stuff.
lie, the reason existed. Right.
Somebody had a reason, and as crazy as it is, like Russia's made up a reason why they're going into Ukraine. But a lot of the
Right.
stuff here, like Trump has no reason or no
No.
plan or anything, so he
None.
can like nobody can
Except
get rowing in the
posturing.
same direction.
Right. It's except
Um,
posturing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So in terms of drones, like it's like I almost feel like so Ukraine is proving that there's this new type of warfare, and then I think that maybe in the US, there's a little bit of like, oh my gosh, we've got all the really expensive stuff. We are the what the Germans were in World War II. We had like the
Right.
craziest, biggest, best technology. And the
Hmm.
way we beat the Germans back then and the Russians beat the Germans is they outproduced them. They effectively just threw more tanks at them.
Right.
Um, and we're sort of in the opposite place right now. And I think that the new place is going to be how quickly can you ramp up with the current technology if you get attacked effectively, which is
Hmm.
what Ukraine did. Ukraine went from being what they were to all of a sudden being able to produce drones to get symmetry on the battlefield, right?
Right.
Um, I think that's actually what the new war is, outside of digital stuff and psyops and stuff. But my point is that I'm not sure if ramping up and having a huge army of drones is actually the answer. Because if
Right.
war doesn't start for 10 years, technology has moved so far forward that you don't want to be building your drone army until the ninth year to fight in the 10th,
Totally.
if you see
Right.
what I'm saying. So
Especially if
actually,
it's
what you're doing is you're planning on how to be open enough to be able to get there fast.
or
How
you're
to
trying to
how to be
sucker everybody
resilient.
else down a path when you're not going that way at all. Like everything has to be a fucking defense head fake. Like if you're in the
Yeah,
CIA or you're in the DoD right now, your main mission would be to convince I don't know, the Russians, the Iranians, the Houthis, the Chinese that you're going in one direction when you aren't. Like the F-47 could be a total like
right.
mirage, right?
Totally.
We don't
Totally.
even have the 35 to speak of, not in any kind of, not a true arsenal of them, right? The way we do,
Yeah, then we'd have a few hundred, right? Three
yeah,
or 400. I don't know the
right.
number right now in the US, but it's not crazy.
No. And there's no reason to jump to the next one, like to have a sixth gen fight. I mean, they're always going to be looking for one, and they're going to rename the goddamn thing like after he leaves, anyways. Like the idea that it's that you gen up to the 47 just to get him to sign off on it. And this is the same thing. Like the Defense Department, they know the Macron handshake. Everybody knows it right now. And he's too stupid to understand that he's being played. Now, the one thing I do want to show you and get your thoughts on this is that someone and I've been waiting to show you this, and thanks Gino for bringing this up again. Let me make sure that
Is this
Hi, I'm
Reno?
Jeff.
You said
okay. Hold
Reno
on,
or
huh?
walking?
This is
You said
no,
something about Reno or San Francisco?
this in Palo Alto,
Palo
which
Alto,
is
right?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I was way off.
Somebody hacked the crosswalks in Palo
Okay.
Alto,
All
and here's what they sound like. Let's see if I can scroll this up.
Hi, I'm Jeff Bezos. This crosswalk is sponsored by Amazon Prime with an important message. Please don't tax the rich. Otherwise, all the other billionaires will move to Florida too. Wouldn't it be terrible if all the rich people left Seattle or got Luigi'd and then normal people could afford to live here again? Jeffrey Bezos.
Like, so that's actually or sorry, that was in Seattle. That's the one in Seattle that they did
Okay.
in the U
Is
district.
there is
Yeah.
there like details on maybe how it happened
No.
in there?
So let's
Okay.
see. So they go.
So
They're doing it all over
I,
the place. So California crosswalks. I'm trying to find the full length one of the Bay Area ones. Yeah, here you go. Here, this is another one of these. Hold on, Dink. Let me bring this in here. I'll pause it, and this is as Elon Musk.
Wait. Hi, this is Elon Musk. Welcome to Palo Alto, the home of Tesla engineering. You know, they say money can't buy happiness, and yeah, okay. I guess that's true. God knows I've tried. But it can buy a Cybertruck, and that's pretty sick, right? Right? Fuck, I'm so alone.
It just at the end goes, "Fuck, I'm so alone." Can't buy a Cybertruck. That's pretty sick, right? Fuck, I'm so alone. So there is.
so I would bet that I used to have this saying like don't assume that they've got it all figured out, right? That's one of my Robisms. I got a lot of them.
Yes.
It came from a time one of my good long-term friends, he worked at Motorola when I first got out of college, and I worked at a design firm, and he was visiting Apple, and they were like there was a partnership between Apple and Motorola for something that he was working on, and he went to Apple thinking, oh my God, these guys are going to be so awesome, and I'm going to learn so much, and he came back and he was like, yeah, they were just as screwed up as we were, right?
Right.
The reason I say that for this is like, you know, I don't know any details about that, but I would assume that a city who buys Crosswalk, these products, are buying them from a private company that either makes them or sells them, and there's probably no protection in any of them. Like, who knows how they're connected?
Because why
to
would you?
anything,
Who's going to fuck with like blind people trying to cross the street? And here's what I would say. Don't do that, because the vocal part of it is for the visually impaired, you assholes. I mean, it's funny, but like, put a timer on it and have it change back. Like, don't leave it so that like people who are trying to cross the fucking street, you know, are endangered because they can't see, because you didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Hold on.
You know, it's funny, I used to think he was just this dumb sack of shit, but when you get to know him, he's actually really sweet and tender and loving. Sweetie, come back to bed.
You hear that? It goes, at the end of that, you can barely hear it, where he's like, I used to think Trump was kind of a dumb shit, but now he's like sweet and tender and loving. And then you hear Trump's voice in the background go, sweetie, come back to bed.
Oh my gosh. I mean, on a pure subversive level, that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Yes. And again, beats the shit out of setting cars on fire, you know, a couple of blocks from my house.
I mean, again, funny, but like, who knows where those, I mean, where were those made? How are they connected? Like, how does the file that plays on the speaker get to the thing? Who knows? Like, I don't know any of that stuff.
Well, you know, sometimes some areas, and I'm surprised this isn't done more often. The incoming mayor, does a welcome to the airport. We're so glad you could be here in Baltimore because blah blah blah, and they do it all. They re-up it only during those times, and they're under the impression, I think, that nobody cares about that. Like, who would hack the mayor's message? And I'm fairly certain the Palo Alto ones update theirs because it's Silicon Valley area, kind of that those are the areas where they're like, this is the new shit, right? They're very comfortable with the new shit, whether it's actually, you know, it's safe or not.
Well, or like I mean, so sometimes when I hear about like corruption, like in Chicago, like corrupt Chicago aldermen and things like that, I think about like, you know what, like if I had to fix my deck, who would I call? I'd probably call my brother, right?
Yes. Right. Right.
And then
Right.
my brother would be like, "Oh, I know a guy that fixed my deck." And then they would,
Yeah.
and so many of these things that are all around us are just people, and they
Yes.
work in the city, and they're like, you know what? We have to upgrade our crosswalks, and we have to put stoplights up and stop signs. So like,
Right.
where do we buy those things from, right? And so the real thing that to watch on this, I think, is how many of those things came from China, because
Right.
they actually aren't made here. And there was a factory in China that basically was like, I know what we'll do. We'll make a whole bunch of US infrastructure stuff. And then
Hmm.
governments who just have a shoestring budget will just buy from us instead of buying from so and so.
Right.
Or like it could just be some guys that, some people that, are normal people that build these things and they sell
Right.
them, and they're not super hackers, they're like, I don't know. They don't
Yeah.
have like,
Or that they like,
NORAD level security on their crosswalks.
or some like right-wing leaning libertarianish kind of person
Or
who's
that.
paranoid and watches too much fucking YouTube, works on the city council and held out until we got a local vendor to program our crosswalk signs, because what if terrorists start making them yell Allah Akbar, right? And so my buddy would never let that happen, and so they pick a vendor, or their local Halliburton, to do this, to kind of your
Yeah.
point. And they didn't really, and honestly, they don't consider that people will fuck around with this in the same way that I think a lot of people were like, well, nobody can hack into the treasury, and nobody's going to let somebody just walk the fuck in there with a backpack
Yeah.
full of USB drives. That'll never happen. And then it does happen. You're like, fuck, now we got to write a bunch of laws that limit the executive branch's ability to just appoint
Totally.
people who can wander in randomly without ever taking an oath of office, and who don't work in the government, and aren't subject to the same, and cannot be pardoned by the president. Like, that's going to have to be a thing, that the president's pardon powers are going to have to be curtailed, uh, in terms of downstream appointments. That if somebody is guilty of an abject crime, not something where like it's political or blah, 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 but somebody just like walked in and assaulted somebody inside a government building, you can't pardon that person. You can't do it for physical attacks, for example. You can also not do it for physical heists, even if it's
Hmm.
information. And there are whistleblower laws if it's something like the Pentagon Papers. But if somebody just walks in and fucking downloads all their shit and just walks out with it, never gives it back, sends it to a fucking server in Russia, and then the president pardons them, and then he's got a fucking Trump Tower Moscow in 6 years. Like, there's no protection against that, and there has to be. So they're either that, or you've got to give like DC more power over crimes committed in its own district, so that the president, it works like a state crime as well as a federal crime on certain things. That if it's, if it deals with taxpayers, for example, like stealing their personal information versus like Pentagon Papers, that
Hmm.
DC would go, we've got taxpayers here. You committed a state crime against everybody here. We need statehood. Like, there's an element of, or states just are going to have to sue civilly all the Doge guys at some point on behalf of their citizens, which
I
is
would
going to
think that
happen,
there's
by the
got
way.
to be avenues for that for sure.
Yes, yeah, that exists already. Yeah, so
So, I mean,
like,
in all
yeah,
these cases, everybody's just playing catch up. And,
right,
that's always my big thing is like we have to give grace to this, to like, Democrats are Democrats, they're not Republicans. So like they're going to be different, and they're going to go about
yes,
things differently, because otherwise they'd be Republicans, right?
right,
So in this like time, like, I mean, things have to get figured out, and it's
hmm
not going to be clean, and all that from a crosswalk thing, I guess, but I didn't mean to go there with that. um, but like
right,
there are a lot of things around us, like we don't even recognize them. They just sort of like blur into the background until they start saying weird things about Elon Musk, right? Like, but
right.
these are all things, and
They're
when we
all
think
there.
about like they're all there. They were made by somebody, by somebody's hands, or by a factory or a robot or a thing, and they're full of things inside of it that came from somewhere. And um, yeah, and In my work, like I'm constantly like engaging with U.S. manufacturers that are modernizing, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that modernization is like bringing their people along with them. And because you can't just fire everybody and hope that you're going to find these new magical
Right.
people that know how to do the new thing, like, um, but a lot of
Uh,
people are sort of like holed up in the place that they always were. And the way I try to look at it is like they're doing that out of because they're fearful. They don't want to
yeah.
lose what they've always known. So this is the path we need to push through with everybody, is like, how
Mm-hmm.
do we modernize and make these changes without leaving people behind?
Right. Well, and I would argue that when you have people who specialize in something and then a new technology comes in to do that job quicker or more efficiently or whatever, it still doesn't give you the wisdom to use it properly. And
Sure,
and
absolutely.
military is another great example of it. Like you can have a robot that kills more efficiently, but there's a uh, but do you want it to in that circumstance? Do you want it to be used in this area? Do you want to unleash this tool? Will it lead to more problems than it solves in this circumstance? If you look at there's this clip of a movie of Brad Pitt. I forget the name of the movie, but he plays a general in it. It's kind of a comedy, but he's talking about, like, he does an equation on the board, and he says, you got 10 terrorists and you kill two. uh, how many terrorists do you have? And everybody thinks 8. And he goes, no, 20, because you got the 8 left over. And then you've got these guys may have been on the fence. They didn't want to join the movement, friends of the 2 guys you killed. But now that you killed their friend, they're on board. So you get 6 of those guys for each dead guy. So killing 2 terrorists creates 20 terrorists, like, out of the 10, or every time you do it. And that there's an element of that thinking is what keeps you out of bad wars. Makes
Hmm.
you, able to convince Trump to, quote, wave off the Israeli attack on Iran, for example, or an American-backed attack on Iran for the time being. And
Yeah,
if you flush that wisdom in the name of, like, we can automate all that shit. Well,
yeah.
you
This
lose
is a
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying you just lose the humanity part of it, and the idea that humans do get smarter over time in terms of their ability to see the ramifications of things as humans, whereas there's no
Hmm.
real evidence that AI is good at that at all, nor would it be. It can tell you the fastest route to something, just like GPS. And if you took GPS, one of the reasons why GPS works is because it had all the people who made maps, and it borrowed those maps, and then it borrowed the information from traffic stuff that's coming from the city and the local area, and said, okay, there's a diverting traffic here, there's a detour there. As it improves, it has a mix of those kind of things. If GPS was just like, how do I get there the quickest? They go, well, you can drive through this playground because your car will drive right over the teeter totter. If it was just left up to the hyper efficiency, the straightest, the fastest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and who cares if there's some kids in the way? There's a reason
Yeah,
why it piggybacks on all the wisdom of, oh, not only are we going to need streets, but these streets are all going to have to be even so that the cars that are driving on them aren't fucked up when they roll into town, and therefore their axle falls off and crashes another car and has it careen into a convenience store. And at that point, we're also going to need stop signs. But we don't trust everybody, because we can't just have a stop sign, because some people will just linger there too long. They're not sure how long they should stop because not everybody can read very well. And so we'll do lights, but it can't just be red and green. We got to let people know it's coming, because people can be fucking stupid. All those elements, what we're using AI for, is piggybacked on top of all the mistakes humans have made. This is why I'm not that impressed by SpaceX ultimately, when it doesn't give credit to all the stuff that NASA discovered that it is piggybacking on top of. Same thing with DeepSeek.
that's Agree with
DeepSeek
that.
just piggybacked on ChatGPT. And it's fine if you say that. If you say we stand on the shoulders of giants and we're creating what we're creating, and without them doing all the sacrifice and all the hard math back in the day, this never would be possible. Then I have respect for that. But if you're pretending like we're the fucking shit, why didn't they do it this way the whole time? Like, okay, fuck you, dude. You have no respect for the work that anybody has done. And that's also when you talk about taking stuff for granted, that's where people fall. Like they take these systems for granted, and as they should. You shouldn't have to go, gee, I hope this crosswalk's going to work. God damn, any more
Well,
than, quite frankly,
therein lies the
elbowing it
magic
because I don't want to touch it.
I think therein lies the magic that it actually does work. Like,
Yes.
There's so much to complain about, but like you've said before, like you drive down a road and there's a yellow line separating you from something that can kill you going the other way, right? And it
Right.
doesn't kill you very often,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Very,
rare
yeah.
that the car.
Rarely do
So
they just, by choice, especially cross that center line and just crash into other people.
yeah, so to your point about the GPS, like you're right, the GPS, all it does is tell you where you are. It just gives you literally a point
Yeah.
on the earth. That's all it does. And everything else is a combination of a whole bunch of other technologies that work
Right. It's
together
built on the work
to
that human
actually
beings have
create the
done
map and
to better the
yeah.
world in every way. And every day, all the time, and AI is adding to that. And we'll end on this very positive thought. Every day, people are getting up all day trying to figure out how to solve Lou Gehrig's disease and how to fucking make paralyzed people walk again and fight cancer and make traffic more efficient so there are fewer accidents and figure out ways that maybe you can spot DUIs using, intersection cameras and ways that you can disable stolen cars so that if anybody runs away with them, that they start driving around like a fucking maniac, you can just shut it off without them having to T-bone the goddamn thing and drive it off the road and maybe, ruin somebody's fucking year because they're in traction because they were hit by, they're sideswiped by a car that was stolen, 8 miles away, whatever. People are doing that all day, every day. And AI is yet another tool in the way to do that. Even, I would argue, in the using 11 Labs, which is more than likely how they did it, to clone Elon Musk's voice and Trump's voice to make a joke at their expense on a hacked fucking crosswalk, which is hilarious and a great way to protest that doesn't cause any physical harm to anybody, right? That in and of itself, and has more power against those kind of people with weak egos than even if you set fire to something, because they just would use that as evidence that they should stomp on people more.
Yeah. I mean, that story, the AI voices part doesn't concern me at all. The part that concerns me is how did they get to the speaker, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, sure. Well,
um,
I don't know that they've discovered how yet.
I was kind of searching while you were talking, and they didn't. But so to maybe kind of add to your point there, I think of because we've humanized AI, like we keep adding human traits
Yeah.
to it, and
Anthropomorphizing
they
it. Yeah.
shouldn't. We shouldn't do that. Like so, I try to think of AI as being effectively a search engine for concepts. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a decent way to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
and also
A
so it can
compiler.
recognize patterns, it can recognize concepts, and it can
Mm-hmm.
translate them. And the interesting thing about this, if you were to compare it to Google search engine for words, like so I would
Yeah.
call Google a search engine for words, not for concepts.
Right.
Um, it's what's really cool about it is it can go both directions, meaning you can ask it a concept and it can translate back to an answer, but it
Right.
can also create using the same thing it's using to answer your question, it can create something. So
Right.
like a picture, like the same tools that allow a car to see and recognize a deer in the road and stop, used in reverse, creates a
Right.
picture of a deer in the road.
Yes.
Um, and so this is more like a it's more like a computer program, a piece of software
Mm-hmm.
that you have very a very quick and high level of ask answer, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
and
UI. It's still like I still
yeah,
stand by my thing about it's a user interface for the computational and compilation capabilities of circuitry, of transistors
sure,
being able to route energy to take bits of information and link them together and compile them in a digestible form. And the in out of how you get those things is conversational versus a mouse and fake little folders on your desktop.
yeah.
Right.
So
One
I
last
try to, I
one
try to, one last point
yeah.
for me first. I try to then take that sort of way of thinking about AI, and I
Yeah.
try to say, instead of saying, how is AI going to take my job? I say, what am I going to make with AI? In this new
Yes.
paradigm, in this new world,
That's
what are
right.
we going to make? What is it going to
Mhm.
do?
Mhm.
And if you think about that, what am I going to do with it? I think that's a lot better place to be.
Agreed.
Um,
I agree.
because we're
So
going to be doing different things.
yeah, and we
I
should.
actually
And
just
that's
I I have to take a call. It's
you
past
got to
one.
go. All right, I'll
I
play the
gotta go.
last couple of these for so real quick. Hold on.
Hi, I'm Eli. Can we be friends? Will you be my friend? I'll give you a Cybertruck, I promise. Okay, look, you don't know the level of depravity I would stoop to just for a crumb of approval. I mean, let's be real. It's not like I had any moral convictions to begin with, right?
That's that's that's
Nice.
one of them. And then I think it's this one.
Wait. Hey, it's Zuck here. I just wanted to tell you how very proud I am of everything we've been building together. From undermining democracy to cooking our grandparents' brains with AI slop to making the world less safe for trans people. Nobody does it better than us, and I think that's pretty neat. Zuck out.
That was that's Mark Zuckerberg's voice for those at home. Anyways, thank you, Rob Glenn, for joining me for Friday AI. Always a
Thank you
pleasure.
for having me.
And I look forward to seeing what you make, dear sir. And I'm looking forward to seeing the new root design
Yeah, that's
AI
Oxford.
factory. No, whatever. Yeah, right.
So we move in on May 1st. So when you're here on the 3rd, we won't be able to go there because it won't be moving in. But the next time you're in, we'll be able to
You
go over
you
there.
don't think I would help you move, you bastard? You don't think I would help
You're
you
not going
move
to have
in?
enough time to do that. We need to do it on like flatbed trucks with
All
forklifts.
right.
If you
I
want to
can.
come drive the forklift, I guess.
That's a great idea. I learned how to from Smokey and the Bandit. So, anyways, go take your call.
All
Talk
right.
to you later. Thank you so much. You're awesome. Rob Glenn,
Yeah.
Root Design,
Bye,
Chicago.
everybody.
Everybody, okay. Bye. There he goes. Now he's free and he can. Uh, and chat room. Let's bring you guys in here. I I have my um like every time we get in this conversation, Rob and I kind of um he's so into the practical aspect of it because he does a lot of this design work. He's really on the cutting edge of trying to implement a lot of these things, both on this like what small business scale level stuff. Um, uh, sorry, and then there's obviously big automation stuff that's going to be happening. I think the other thing that I have to point out as an ego thing, if I might, a Rob flex, yeah, totally. Yes, in the protester tomorrow, I will be going to another one. Where you're having fun with trolls today? Excellent. Well, I will say that most of the trolls that we probably have in here today are AI generated anyways. So be gentle because they're not stupid on purpose. Poor things. Let's see. If you enter a comment, delete it. Will it still appear on Hal's chat wall? No. The hacked crosswalks are hilarious. I agree. Thanks a bunch. I'll see you later this evening. Yes, I will see you guys this afternoon. Can I just show you like this is gonna this would annoy Rob or whatever, but this is what I'm saving up for next. And again, the ego aspect of it is not lost on anyone. So MIT has Sparki, and this is the what was originally called Project Digits. there you go. Previously Project Digits is now DGX Spark. Hi there. And that's this little thing. It's this gold computer. I think it's to appeal to Trump. I have no doubt they're going to bring one and go, this is the first one off the press, Mr. President, it's for you. Oh, yeah, it's nice. That's nice, huh? But this, it's got the Blackwell super chip. It's got 128 gigs of memory and an AI software stack pre-installed. So you can prototype a bunch of shit. Like, it's basically a desktop supercomputer. It's fucking stupid. It's 1,000 AI tops. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, what this thing will be able to do. And it's like $4,000. But like, I want to consider this thing, 1,000 tops, full AI stack. You could literally like prototype robots with this fucking thing. You could put this thing in a robot's chest and have a super robot that runs around. And it costs almost the exact same amount that this thing did when it was new. These things were, with a printer, it was $3,000 for this Mac 128K. It's not a 512, you snobs. It's a 128. This is my first computer. This is the computer like I did or avoided doing homework on. $3,000. Are you fucking like, my only reason my dad and I could afford this is because his architectural firm chipped in and split it because Apple was giving deals on these things back then. So he could do some of the work at home. They were the first remote work, which was basically giving your employees homework and they could type shit up on these things. But I still have it. It still boots up. But that was $3,000. This thing's $1,000 more, and holy shit, it's just nuts. So, anyways, their end of the lesson. Hold on, let me bring back the chat room, and I'll let you guys go. And I will see you this afternoon. Your first computer's long gone. Yeah, museum piece. It kind of is. 87, 86, something like that. Yeah. We should have an AI kidney. I don't know. I'm a bit worried. Will we? It's hard to. I don't know if there was a. Uh-oh. Oh dear God. Something's wrong. Something's happening.
The kidney has a very special place in the heart.
I gotta go. Jesus. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, CK. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Boston Brian. Thank you, Rose Blue.